You find yourself standing in a narrow corridor deep within the Forbidden City, the year 1720. The walls around you are painted in imperial yellow, but the air tastes of fear and jasmine. Your silk slippers make no sound on the polished stone as you follow the elderly eunuch ahead of you, his shadow dancing in the flickering candlelight. You are 15 years old, and you have just been selected as one of the emperor's newest concubines. The eunuch stops suddenly and turns to face you, his eyes holding a mixture of pity and cold efficiency. "Listen carefully, child," he whispers, his voice barely audible above the distant sound of water trickling from ornamental fountains. "What I am about to tell you will determine whether you live or die in this place. These are not mere customs or traditions. They are the invisible chains that bind every woman who enters the Son of Heaven's bedchamber." Your heart pounds against your ribs as you realize that everything you thought you knew about imperial luxury and honor was a beautiful lie. The real rules of the harem are about to be revealed, and they are stranger and more terrifying than anything you could have imagined. Before diving into these forgotten stories of survival and suffering, if you enjoy learning about the hidden truths of history, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this. And please, comment below to let me know where you're listening from. I find it incredible that we're exploring these ancient stories together from different parts of the world, connected across time and space while sharing curiosity about the past. The first rule they teach you is the most fundamental. You must never, under any circumstances, turn your back to the emperor. This seems simple enough until you realize what it actually means. When the Son of Heaven enters his chambers, you must somehow maneuver yourself so that you are always facing him, even as you undress, even as you move about the room, even as you perform the most intimate acts. The women who came before you have developed an almost supernatural ability to move sideways, to pivot and glide like dancers, never once allowing their spine to face the man who holds their life in his hands. But why? The answer lies in the paranoid mind of absolute power. An emperor who rules over 300 million subjects knows that death can come from anywhere, even from the soft hands of a beautiful woman, a concealed needle, a hidden blade, poison under the fingernails. These are the weapons that haunt the dreams of the most powerful man on earth. Your back turned toward him represents a moment of vulnerability, where anything could be hidden, anything could be drawn. You learn this lesson from watching Malin, a concubine who has survived 3 years in the harem. She moves through the emperor's chambers like water, never abrupt, never showing her back. When she needs to reach for something behind her, she turns in a graceful arc, her eyes never leaving the emperor's face. When she removes her robes, she does so with a fluid motion that seems choreographed, each garment falling away while she remains in an eternal state of partial genuflection. The second rule is even more disturbing. You must never speak unless spoken to, and when you do speak, you must refer to yourself in the third person. You are not I, you are this unworthy slave, or this lowly concubine. Your individual identity, your sense of self, must be erased the moment you enter his presence. The emperor does not make love to people. He makes love to vessels, to objects that exist solely for his pleasure. This linguistic erasure goes deeper than mere protocol. It rewires your brain, forcing you to think of yourself as something less than human. Within months, many concubines find that they cannot even think of themselves as I when they are alone. They have become fragmented beings, their very thoughts colonized by the grammar of submission. The third rule involves your eyes, and it is perhaps the most psychologically devastating of all. You must never look directly into the emperor's eyes during intimacy. Your gaze must be fixed on a point just below his chin, creating the illusion of submission while avoiding the dangerous territory of genuine eye contact. But this is not about respect. It is about preventing the emperor from seeing your soul, and more importantly, preventing you from seeing his. Eye contact creates intimacy, and intimacy creates complications. The emperor must be able to use your body without confronting your humanity. If he sees the fear in your eyes, the pain, the desperate longing for home, he might hesitate. If he sees the intelligence burning behind your gaze, he might begin to wonder what you are thinking, what you are planning. And if you see into his eyes, you might discover that the Son of Heaven is just a man, lonely and afraid, desperately trying to prove his divinity through the conquest of women's bodies. But the most twisted aspect of this rule is what happens when it is violated. If you accidentally meet his gaze, you must immediately prostrate yourself and beg forgiveness, not for disrespect, but for the presumption of treating him as an equal. The punishment for repeated violations is not death, but something worse. You are sent to serve in the quarters of the eunuchs, where you will spend the rest of your life, as a reminder to other women of what happens when you forget your place. The fourth rule governs the most intimate moments of all. During the act itself, you must maintain complete silence unless the emperor specifically commands you to make noise. But this is not about discretion or modesty. It is about control. Your pleasure, your pain, your very breath must be regulated by his will. If you cry out spontaneously, you are acknowledging that you have an independent physical response, a body that exists beyond his control. This cannot be tolerated. The enforcement of this rule creates a horrifying theater of intimacy. Women learn to hold their breath, to bite their tongues until they bleed, to dissociate so completely from their bodies that they feel nothing at all. The emperor, meanwhile, becomes addicted to the power of commanding response. He might spend an entire night trying to break a woman's silence, not through pleasure, but through pain, through endurance, through the simple assertion of his will over her autonomy. Some women break under this pressure. They develop a condition that palace physicians cannot name, a complete inability to make any sound at all, even when they are alone. They become living ghosts, their voices stolen by the impossible demands of imperial desire. The fifth rule is about timing, and it reveals the mechanical nature of imperial sexuality. The emperor's climax must always come last, but not because of any consideration for his partner's pleasure. Instead, it is because his release represents the moment when the cosmic order is restored. His seed is considered sacred, a direct connection to the divine mandate of heaven. For a concubine to reach her peak before him would be tantamount to suggesting that her mortal pleasure could somehow supersede the divine will. This creates a nightmarish calculation for the women involved. They must constantly monitor not only their own responses, but also read the subtle signs of the emperor's arousal. They become experts in the art of suppression, learning to delay or prevent their own climax through sheer force of will. Some develop techniques of mental distraction so effective that they can recite entire poems or perform complex mathematical calculations while their bodies are being used. The sixth rule involves the aftermath, and it is here that the true cruelty of the system becomes apparent. Once the emperor has finished, the concubine must remain in position, usually prostrate, until he gives permission to move. This can last minutes or hours, depending on his mood. During this time, she is not allowed to clean herself, adjust her position for comfort, or show any sign of physical discomfort. The purpose of this rule is to reinforce the fundamental inequality of the exchange. The emperor can immediately return to his normal state, can dress, can call for refreshments, can even summon other concubines. But the woman who has just served him must remain frozen in the position of absolute vulnerability, her body still bearing the evidence of their encounter, until he decides to release her from this final act of submission. The seventh rule is about pregnancy, and it reveals the complex intersection of politics and biology in the imperial harem. If a concubine becomes pregnant, she must immediately report it to the head eunuch, not to the emperor himself. But here's the twist. She must report it even if she is not certain, even if she only suspects. The penalty for failing to report a pregnancy is death, but the penalty for falsely reporting one is a beating that leaves permanent scars. This creates a state of constant anxiety about every bodily function. Women become hyper-vigilant about their cycles, their appetite, their energy levels. They develop elaborate systems of tracking and monitoring their own bodies, turning their physicality into a source of terror rather than strength. The lucky ones learn to read the signs accurately. The unlucky ones guess wrong and bear the consequences on their skin. But the most insidious aspect of this rule is what happens to confirmed pregnancies. The concubine is immediately isolated from all other women and placed under constant surveillance. She is not being protected. She is being monitored to ensure that she does not attempt to terminate the pregnancy or harm herself. The potential heir is valuable. The woman carrying it is merely a vessel that must be kept functional. The eighth rule concerns the presence of other women. and it reveals the calculated way that jealousy and competition were weaponized in the imperial harem. When multiple concubines are summoned to the emperor's chambers simultaneously, there is a strict hierarchy of interaction. The most favored concubine leads, but the others must participate in specific ways, sometimes as audience, sometimes as assistants, sometimes as competitors in elaborate sexual performances. The psychological impact of this rule cannot be overstated. Women who might otherwise form alliances or friendships are forced to view each other as threats and obstacles. They must perform desire for the same man while simultaneously competing for his attention. They must appear to enjoy scenarios that reduce them to interchangeable objects, while maintaining the facade of individual devotion. The most heartbreaking aspect of this rule is what it does to genuine friendships. Women who care for each other are forced to participate in each other's degradation. They must watch their friends be used and humiliated, and they must sometimes be the instruments of that humiliation themselves. The bonds between women, which might otherwise provide comfort and resistance, are systematically corrupted and weaponized. The 9th rule involves the emperor's moods, and it demonstrates the impossible standard of perfection demanded from the concubines. They must be able to instantly read and respond to the emperor's emotional state, adjusting their entire demeanor and behavior accordingly. If he is angry, they must be soothing but not presumptuous. If he is sad, they must be comforting but not pitying. If he is celebratory, they must be joyful but not overly enthusiastic. This requires an almost superhuman level of emotional intelligence and self-control. The concubines become expert psychologists, studying every micro-expression, every shift in posture, every change in breathing pattern. They develop an intuitive understanding of power and ego that would make modern diplomats jealous, but this expertise comes at a terrible cost. They lose the ability to have authentic emotional responses of their own. The 10th rule is about memory, and it is perhaps the most tragic of all. The concubines must remember every detail of their encounters with the emperor, what he said, what he did, what pleased him, what disappointed him. But they must also forget these encounters the moment they leave his chambers. They must maintain perfect recall in his presence and perfect amnesia outside of it. This creates a split consciousness that many women find impossible to maintain. They develop elaborate mental filing systems, ways of compartmentalizing their experiences so that they can access them when needed and suppress them when necessary. Some succeed in this psychological juggling act. Others break entirely, developing conditions that we might now recognize as dissociative disorders. The 11th rule concerns the seasonal nature of imperial desire. The emperor's sexual appetite follows the rhythms of the agricultural calendar, with specific months and festivals requiring different types of performance and presentation. During harvest celebrations, the concubines must embody fertility and abundance. During the winter solstice, they must represent the return of light and warmth. During times of war, they must channel martial energy and strength. This means that the women must constantly reinvent themselves, becoming living representations of abstract concepts rather than individual human beings. They must study not only the emperor's personal preferences, but also the cosmic and political significance of different times of year. They become actresses in an elaborate theatrical production where the script is always changing and the stakes are always life and death. The 12th rule involves the presence of witnesses, and it reveals the voyeuristic nature of imperial power. Certain encounters must be observed by eunuchs or senior concubines, not for the emperor's pleasure, but to ensure that the rules are being followed. These witnesses are required to report any violations, any signs of genuine emotion, any evidence that the concubine is experiencing the encounter as anything other than a sacred duty. This creates a terrifying panopticon of sexual surveillance. The women never know when they are being watched, never know who might be reporting on their performance. They must maintain the facade of perfect submission, even when they think they are unobserved, because the consequences of being caught in a moment of authenticity are severe. The 13th rule is about gifts and rewards, and it demonstrates the psychological manipulation at the heart of the harem system. The emperor occasionally bestows presents on his concubines, jewelry, silk, delicacies. But these gifts come with invisible strings attached. Accepting a gift means accepting a debt that can never be repaid. The concubine must express gratitude not just for the gift itself, but for the honor of being chosen to receive it. More insidiously, the gifts are used to create hierarchies and jealousies among the women. The concubine who receives a valuable present becomes a target for resentment from others, but refusing a gift is seen as an insult to the emperor's generosity. The women are trapped in a system where every kindness is a weapon and every reward is a punishment. The 14th rule involves the concubine's families, and it reveals the true scope of the harem's control. The women's relatives are essentially held hostage to ensure their compliance, but the threat is not just against their lives, it is against their honor, their social standing, their ability to marry and have children. The concubine who displeases the emperor does not just risk her own death, she risks the destruction of everyone she has ever loved. This creates a psychological burden that extends far beyond the walls of the Forbidden City. The concubines carry the weight of multiple generations on their shoulders. They must perform not just for their own survival, but for the survival of their entire family line. The system ensures that even in their most intimate moments, they are never truly alone. The faces of their parents, their siblings, their future nieces and nephews are always watching. The 15th rule concerns aging, and it is perhaps the most inevitably tragic of all. As the concubines grow older, they must find ways to maintain their appeal without appearing to try too hard. They must age gracefully, but not noticeably. They must accept their diminishing status while still competing for the emperor's attention. They must mentor younger concubines while knowing that these same women will eventually replace them. The beauty rituals become increasingly desperate and dangerous. Women use lead-based cosmetics that poison their skin. They undergo painful procedures to maintain their youthful appearance. They develop eating disorders and exercise compulsions in their attempt to hold back time. The lucky ones die young before they have to face the slow degradation of their value in the emperor's eyes. The 16th rule involves death, and it brings us to the darkest corner of the harem system. When an emperor dies, his concubines face a choice that is not really a choice at all. They can volunteer to be buried with him, ensuring their honor and their family's security. Or they can live on as widows, forever marked by their association with a dead ruler, never able to remarry or have children of their own. The preparation for this final rule begins from the moment a concubine enters the harem. She must cultivate a relationship with death, must learn to see it not as an ending, but as a fulfillment of duty. She must write letters to her family explaining her choice, must compose poetry about her devotion, must participate in her own mythology even as she prepares for her own destruction. The 17th rule is about resistance, and it is here that we see the incredible strength and ingenuity of the women who survived this system. Despite everything designed to break them, they found ways to maintain their humanity, their connections to each other, their sense of self. They developed secret languages, coded conversations, hidden rituals that allowed them to remember who they were beneath the roles they were forced to play. Some forms of resistance were subtle. A glance held too long, a song hummed just slightly off-key, a way of arranging flowers that spelled out messages in a language only other concubines could read. Other forms were more dramatic. Elaborate suicide plots, escape attempts, secret pregnancies that were hidden from the palace authorities. The women who attempted these acts of rebellion knew the consequences, but they chose to risk everything for moments of authentic choice. The 18th rule concerns love, and it is the most complex and heartbreaking of all. The concubines are forbidden from feeling genuine affection for the emperor, but they are also forbidden from not feeling it. They must simulate love so perfectly that it becomes indistinguishable from the real thing, but they must also maintain enough emotional distance to survive the inevitable rejection and replacement. This creates a psychological tightrope that few women can walk successfully. Some fall into genuine love and are destroyed by it. Others maintain such complete emotional detachment that they become incapable of feeling anything at all. The rare women who find the perfect balance between simulation and protection often pay for this skill with their sanity, becoming performers so accomplished that they lose track of their own authentic emotions. The 19th rule involves the emperor's death, and it reveals the ultimate disposability of the concubines' lives. When the Son of Heaven dies, the women who have served him become dangerous reminders of the previous regime. They know too much, have seen too much, represent too much of the old order. The new emperor must either eliminate them or find ways to neutralize their influence. The lucky ones are sent to remote temples to live out their days as Buddhist nuns. The unlucky ones simply disappear, their fate recorded in no official documents. The truly unfortunate ones are kept alive, but relegated to the lowest levels of the palace hierarchy, serving as warnings to the new generation of concubines about the temporary nature of imperial favor. The 20th and final rule is about forgetting, and it brings us full circle to the beginning of our story. The women who survive the harem system must learn to forget everything they have experienced, everything they have seen, everything they have been forced to do. They must become blank slates, empty vessels ready to be filled with new purposes and new identities. But forgetting is not erasure. The memories remain, buried deep in the body and the unconscious mind. They surface in nightmares, in sudden moments of panic, in the inability to trust or love or believe in their own worth. The women carry these invisible scars for the rest of their lives, walking reminders of a system that valued their beauty more than their humanity. As you stand now in that same corridor where we began, older and wiser and infinitely more tired, you understand that the strange bedroom rules of the Imperial harem were never really about sex at all. They were about power, the power to reduce human beings to objects, to transform love into performance, to make survival contingent on the complete surrender of self. The eunuch who first whispered these rules to you is long dead, buried in an unmarked grave like so many others who served the Forbidden City. The emperor you knew has been replaced by his son, who has been replaced by his son in an endless cycle of power and submission. But the rules remain, passed down like a secret language from one generation of women to the next. You have survived by forgetting how to be human and learning how to be a shadow. You have mastered the art of appearing to exist while actually disappearing. You have become an expert in the performance of desire, the simulation of submission, the careful navigation of a world where a single misstep can mean death. And now, as you prepare to whisper these same rules to another frightened 15-year-old girl, you realize that you have become the system you once feared. You are the chain that connects the past to the future, the keeper of knowledge that should have died with the last emperor. You are the reason these strange bedroom rules will never truly disappear, no matter how many dynasties rise and fall. The girl standing before you has the same wide eyes you once had, the same hopeful belief that she is about to enter a world of luxury and honor. You know better now. You know that she is about to enter a world where the strangest rule of all is that in order to survive, she must learn to forget that she was ever human at all. In the flickering candlelight, you begin to speak, your voice carrying the weight of centuries, your words weaving another invisible chain in the endless cycle of power and submission that defines the Imperial harem. And somewhere in the distance, you can hear the sound of water trickling from ornamental fountains, the same sound that welcomed you to this place so many years ago, the same sound that will welcome countless other girls in the years to come. The rules never change, only the faces do.